Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the distinction between the people in sales who really are successful and the rest of the people in sales. These distinctions are, sometimes obvious, but mostly they're not really practiced. They're assumed. We kind of bought into the idea that we all have it or we all do it, or since we know it, we're doing it. And that's very different than doing it and then doing it super well. So I got a great guest on. We're going to get into the interview in just a second. I want to make sure you're also checking out the show notes and supporting our partners over at CoVideo. Video email is the secret weapon this year to start conversations and get meetings. It's the way to connect with people. So make sure you're checking out CoVideo. They're doing a lot of video instruction on YouTube on how to use video email as a way of breaking in. So check that out on YouTube. Also, Pipedrive's Enterprise Edition has been out. I've tried it. It's fantastic. If you want a simple way to really have your whole team work together, it's great. If you're an individual working by yourself and you just want a personalized CRM, you want a way of tracking emails, sharing your calendar, and just have a simple way to complete all the contact info in your CRM without having to enter it all, Pipedrive's incredibly well. That's it. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end, and I'll give you an update on what's going on with the courses. We're really breaking through, and the offers that I've got this month. Here we go. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here. So Chris Steele is my name, and I've become known as a business consultant, a professional facilitator, and a force multiplier, they call me.
Yeah.
And that's all about optimizing performance. And one of the things I say is that until the matrix plays out, right, the metaphor of the matrix, human beings are going to be the ones to optimize business results and effectiveness and everything. And one of the areas I love, because I've kind of been an aficionado all my life, is sales, in the context of what we're talking about today. And for me, sales is leadership, it's influence, it's persuasion. And I've got a background in that, and that's what I'm about, and I think that's the context for today's discussion.
Sure. Now, I heard a rumor that AI's taken over. Is that not true? Or
there's actually a really good book that I read recently called Predictive Machines, and I don't remember the name of the author, but I got it on my Kindle, and it's interesting because it's all about what AI's role is. And AI, it's got a place, and eventually it's going to happen, and hopefully, the Terminator plot won't play out and the computers won't take over. But the distinction that the book makes is that computers and AI can't make judgments like humans can.
Oh, damn.
So,
Sometimes my judgment's a little off.
Here.
Hey, you've got a pretty interesting background. How do you go from a Marine recruiter into business consulting? It doesn't seem like a straight road.
Well, eclectic background. I got my undergrad from University of Central Florida back about 30 years ago, and I went straight into sales. I was selling classified advertising for the newspaper, the Orlando Sentinel. Did that for a while, and I got recruited and worked for a company in a sales engineering role, selling industrial flow control equipment to municipalities and power plants across the state of Florida. And I was doing that for a while, and then in 1991, when Desert Shield turned to Desert Storm, it was my patriotic duty to join the effort. So I signed up to go to war and accepted a commission as a logistics officer in the United States Marine Corps, and did that for 4 years on active duty, and it was a great experience around leadership. And for me, like I say, sales is leadership, and I consider the Marine Corps to be the last bastion of pure leadership, because you're potentially leading people to their death, right? And you got to want to inspire people to do that. So that was a component of it. And then I got out of the Marine Corps and I got into worked for a Silicon Valley-based IT firm doing project management, and of course, eventually transitioned into business development and was selling complex enterprise software solutions. And about 15 years ago, I branched out on my own, and now I've been a business consultant, a trainer, a facilitator, and helping people optimize results.
Well, that's it. I saw that part of your background, and I think we probably crossed paths in some of those companies. I knew them very well. Web Methods, BEA.
Oh, my God. Now you're bringing it back. BEA.
Yeah.
I was the guy, by the way. What I did, one of the things I did was I struck strategic alliances with companies like that.
Yeah.
So I was the guy who was responsible for striking the complementary solution provider, the CSP contract with webMethods back in the day. Yep. And this is what, 20 years ago. Crazy stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. I called on them, and it was just a husband and a wife above a dental office in Virginia. Yeah, I was one of the first. I got offered one of the first sales jobs at BEA. But enough about our background. Let's get in. So, what's a force multiplier? Help us with that.
Oh, it's funny. I got to tell you, Brian, what I do. I'm kind of a purpose-driven guy. I mean, my genre is business, and I'm all about realizing that business is all about value exchange. And I, like to equip and condition people to be as valuable in business as possible. And a component of that is, integrating teams. And, the Marine Corps, back to that experience, the fire team is the component. And it's all about trusting your team and being a team player. I also excelled in athletics, by the way. I won a national championship in the sport of rowing, those long, skinny boats that you see in the Olympics. And that's the ultimate team sport. It's all about pulling the oar for the guy in front of you and the guy behind you. So I've conditioned myself and what I do now, and I've just kind of evolved into this capability, and I've been deliberately honing it for the past 30 years, is in the context of force multiplication. I mean, we are a force. I mean, you're a force. I'm a force. We're a force for good, as Tony Robbins would say, right? I am a force for good. So the key is to leverage that force and expand it. And the best way to do this, I mean, there's only three things you can leverage in business. You can leverage your time, manage your time effectively. You can leverage your money, right? Make sure that you're not spending your money, you're investing it, focusing on getting a return. And the third component that you can leverage, which is the key in my perspective, is your team. Okay. So I'm really good at what I do, but I'm not nearly good as what we can do. And I take that, and I've got methodologies and principles and things I teach around, how we can get people to work more effectively together and confront, what their strengths are, and leverage those strengths to be able to, get results faster. So in essence, force multiplication, if you want to call it that. So.
And that's probably becoming even more important today, isn't it? The days of the lone wolf are kind of diminished and far in between. That's if you don't have some kind of team, some kind of collaborators, even if you're an entrepreneur, having your ecosystem.
Well, it's funny, when you say lone wolf, the first metaphor that pops into my mind, as probably did to many people who are listening to this, is the Challenger sale, right? And the methodologies that these guys teach, the Dixon and Adamson teach, is there's a lot of people out there feeling that they have to do it on their own. And there is success with people in sales in the context of being a lone wolf. And I know a lot of people that have excelled in those capacities. But ultimately, in the long term, when it comes to really being oriented towards satisfying your clients and delivering value to your clients, it's about teaming with them. It's about collaborating with them. It's about aligning with them. And that's one of the things that I condition people to do. I mean, there's so many methodologies around that. Again, Challenger sale and challenging and all that stuff. And all the methodologies that you espouse and you teach. And I love what you're doing, Brian, with what you say and what you talk about and conditioning people to step up. And I think it's all about that condition that we're in as leaders, as enrollers, as influencers, as persuaders, is to condition that capability. So we do it with authenticity as opposed to, I got to meet my quota. There's nothing wrong with making money. I mean, we got to make our money. We got to meet our quotas. But if you're going at it from a heart of service around what needs to be done, and it's about that collaborative essence, which is that team, and you're focused on multiplying the results of your client, and you're engaging from that kind of a heartfelt perspective, from my perspective, that makes all the difference.
And that's kind of orthogonal to what we typically see in business. What we typically see is kind of a bunch of self-serving people pretending that they're a team. Maybe I'm too cynical.
Well, unfortunately, as I get older, I get more cynical, and I do my best not to be. But when you see the way of the world, and just look at the world. I mean, here we are existing in a society that's driven by, again, I love business. It's my genre. It's the environment that I play in. And the bottom line for business is the bottom line. It's about profit. It's about results, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are out there driven by that motive primarily. I call it the greed motive,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with greed. I mean, greed drives us. It compels us to want to do more. But if that's your primary driver,
right,
you might want to check that down a little bit and see, what is that? What is that driving you? I mean, again, we all want to meet our quotas. We want to make the sale. But is that your primary driver? And hence it leads to the problem. And that's what develops cynicism. And this is one of the reasons I do what I do as a sales trainer is I'm done being cynical. I'm here to make the world a better place and condition people to sell effectively and with integrity. So.
And how do you take people through that process? I know we don't have a 2-day seminar right here, but I mean, is it to have a common goal? Is that the first step, or?
Yeah. So when I do business development work, so we all know business development's about optimizing the top line, and it comes from two components, marketing and sales, right? You got to pull those two together. And marketing is not sales, but sales dovetails from marketing efforts. From my perspective, it's got to be a system. It's got to be systemized. So you systemize your market efforts and then follow a good sales system. There's lots of systems out there. We could talk for days about, listen, I'm not even going to spout them off, Brian, because you know what they all are. From my perspective, the key is to adopt a system that works. And I've distilled kind of my own system, which is a 7-step methodology. And it makes sense. It's kind of a synthesis between all the gurus, all the Zig Ziglar, Tommy Hopkins, Sandler, and all that stuff, just all the prolific sales leaders. But run yourself as a leader, as a persuader, as an influencer, psychologically through a process and a system. And it starts with that. And the key is to condition that. And then just like you condition an athlete to be a champion, it's about building that muscle and that capability. So the best way, from my perspective, to condition and train salespeople to be more effective is the hot seat, right? The role play. And I say that, and oh my God, the cringe. You can feel that the feeling right now is the squirming in your seat. I don't want the hot seat, but that's where the results lie, is putting yourself into the crucible. And notice what I'm saying. I mean, the Marine Corps, crucible, right? Athletics, the crucible. That's what it takes to perform effectively, is get a system and then inspire people to want to follow it for the sake of the team, and realize the power of that's going to result through that ideally that force multiplication. So it all comes together.
And military certainly does have their systems, right?
Oh yeah, tell me about it. I mean, that's the thing, is you get conditioned. You go through boot camp, you get beat up and everything, and you're kind of. I'll tell you, Brian. I'll tell you a story. When I was going into the Marine Corps, all my friends, you don't want to do that. They're going to brainwash you. And I'm like, oh yeah, the Marine Corps is going to brainwash me. Well, let's see. So sure enough, I went through OCS, I went through basic training, and sure enough, I got brainwashed. I got brainwashed to do what it takes to get the job done. I got brainwashed to have honor, courage, integrity, and commitment to get results in business. Yeah. That's a pretty good brainwashing. So one of the things I like to do is to take that condition and not necessarily put people through a boot camp, but to allow them to experience themselves. And what is their motive? Is it the greed motive that's driving them? It might be. Well, how can you harness that to be able to get results for your clients? Is there ego? You're trying to feed your ego. Again, nothing wrong with ego. But if you're driven to look good, is that the best motive for you to get results for your clients? So anyway, just different angles on it.
Well, those are all good. I mean, because I was interviewing a guy who helps vets get into sales, and we were just spitballing about how the habits, the routines, the beliefs are so aligned with sales. Because both missions are very difficult. And one of my first sales jobs, I was working for a Air Force Academy grad, and so the metaphors were all over the company. And, he was a very gung-ho guy. And you get used to it, and just those routines, the getting up at the same time, PT, even uniforms, right? That there's a certain way to look, a certain way to speak, and you get a regiment system. Not that is necessary for sales, but sales is a performance profession. We are performing in front of people. That's essentially what the role play is, that rehearsal.
Right. It's true. And honestly, the net of it is discipline.
Yeah.
The military and the indoctrination in the crucible instills an ethic of discipline. And, discipline around, as you say, knowing how you're showing up, if there's rules and there's constructs, having the discipline to follow them, because there's always that, that tug, that kind of that incentive to pull you off track. But in the military, when lives are on the line, you've got to have that discipline to follow the system and do what needs to be done. And I love how that flows into, again, enrollment, leadership, persuasion, influence. It's about having the discipline to condition yourself to be that person that your prospects need you to be for them.
And discipline's doing what you don't feel like doing, but knowing it's right. Is that
right? Going to the gym, eating right. I mean, as human beings, we all want more pleasure. We want less pain, right? Like I love to drink beer and eat potato chips and watch TV, right? But that's not where the results lie. So I have to stretch and condition myself to realize, okay, there's a zone of comfort, and it's my responsibility to be able to extend past that zone in order to get the results that I want in my life. And notice what I'm saying here, Brian. Not everybody espouses this philosophy. A lot of people will be like, hey, that's all well and good for you, but I like beer and potato chips and TV. That's cool for me. But that's not the environment that we play in the context of leading clients to optimal solutions, right? So you've got to have that discipline to do what it takes. You've got to have the discipline to balance your life and spend time with your family and your loved ones. If you don't have that discipline, next thing you know, you could be divorced. So discipline shows up in a lot of different ways,
Yeah, definitely. And what are the process that you take your clients through? I'm sure you have some type of assessment. What do you typically see? How do you prioritize how to spend time with them? How do you start that journey?
So the first thing I always do is, for me, it's all about chemistry. It's about making sure that we're appropriate to be able to work together. And I like to work with business leaders that are committed to raising the bar and the performance. And so I always start off with just a conversation. I have a complimentary session where we do an assessment. Usually takes about an hour, and at the end of that, I'm like, okay, great, you're on your own, you're great. Wish you the best, and that I just can't really work with them. Or they say, yeah, let's advance, and then typically the next step is I've got a product, I call it a growth map. It's a strategic business development plan, where it's a 4-hour process, and during that process, we focus on the 3 key components of business leadership. The first one is to see the business as it is. And we actually look at the business, and I run them through a deliberate process. It's kind of an audit, a little bit of an analysis around what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What's working? Then the second component is to see the business as it can be. And that's where we develop a plan focused on what marketing methodologies work. Do you have the right sales talent in the right seats? We do profiling, we do assessments, and then develop a plan with metrics that show the results they're going to get over time. Oftentimes we project that a year. And then the third component of leadership in business is to make it as you see it, which is take that plan and deploy it. So that's how I do it.
And where does it get stuck? Clearly in the deployment, right? The planning is a lot of fun. Right.
And the planning and the conversations are great, and it's a good high energy initiative. And then they'll have the plan. And this is the thing, when I talk about strategic planning, Brian, it's not about having a plan and printing it off and sticking it on the shelf and not following it. From my perspective, it's the process of planning, which puts people into a condition of, something, I wasn't seeing it that way. It innovates the way they think.
Yeah. And
that's usually what happens during the growth map process. And, you're right. The next step is, okay, now we got to deploy it. So you said you wanted to go from here to there, and we know what it's going to take because we mapped it out. And now you got to make that commitment to doing, especially as the business leader, what it's going to take. And business leadership is all about, stacking the deck, hiring the right business development talent, marketing and sales, and of course, operational talent. And it's important that people can lead those, I call it symphonic orchestration. So you're orchestrating a symphony, right? And you visualize the guy standing up there at the podium, tap, tap, tap with the baton. And everyone raises their instruments, and that's what the leader in business gets to do. But so many leaders get so stuck in I call it tactic-itis, in the inness of business, that they don't back off and see the business objectively. See looking at it strategically.
Yeah.
So you're right. It often gets caught up with people just kind of going back into reactive mode as opposed to being more proactive and being a leader in business. So.
And how do you keep them on that plan? I mean, do you have like a year-long implementation or?
Yeah, well, we strike usually a 12-month contract.
Yeah, cool.
And one of the reasons we do that is I'm a pretty well-read guy, and there's, again, whether it be sales training or whatever, or Seth Godin is a prolific author. He's written really good books around innovating the way people think about business. Really good book out there called The Dip.
Yeah.
And it's been proven that in every initiative in the universe, especially in business development, you have the great intentions and you're going to drive, you're going to push, and you're always going to hit a dip. It just always happens. And it's almost like the universe challenging you and testing you as to whether or not you were serious about what you wanted to do. And some of the time those dips, those could be cul-de-sacs, and you got to make sure that if you're going down the wrong road, turn around and go the other way. But you got to make those distinctions, and that's usually what we do during the planning process. But the key is to push through that dip. I mean, every athlete, every champion level athlete will tell you there's the doubt, right? There's the, oh God, it's a pain. And that happens through conditioning. As you raise the bar, you keep knocking the bar down because you're not able to clear it. The only way to clear it is to persevere and again, create that conditioning, whether it be physical conditioning, mental conditioning, or emotional fitness as well, because one of the keys that's consistent in sales is rejection. So how can you confront that rejection and not take it personally? And this is just some of the components that we talk about, when it comes to fostering that championship level performance.
And how do you coach people through that? Because the rejection or the doubt or feeling that the dip is not a dip, or that it's permanent, that's a ditch, not a dip, that there's no ramp up after it. Because certainly all business is a roller coaster of some kind. Nothing's pure linear.
Well, it's interesting that you're actually bringing a story to mind, an example. I've been working with a client for about a year. The guy has a landscape business, and he's going through some interesting times, and he's questioning a lot of stuff. He's had some people, because the key to business is controlling what we can control and letting go of what we can't control, and not being obsessed over things you can't control, which will keep you up at night, and then there goes your physical fitness and your mental fitness, right? Yeah. But as we're going through that period, he sees the value in having somebody like me come in as a sounding board that he can trust to be able to give him perspectives. And okay, he lost his right-hand man literally yesterday. He told me about it yesterday. I was like, oh my God. So what are you going to do now? And the guy got a better job. He got a better offer. He couldn't really control that. I mean, he might have been able to put mechanisms in place for compensation and everything, but it was a mechanism of control where this other gentleman was managing his career. So the client's name is Carl. So Carl, is in a condition right now where, Chris, I'm second guessing myself. I'm not sure if I did the right thing and everything. And it comes down to confronting that and actually being authentic about that reality. And back to what Godin talks about in the dip. If it's a cul-de-sac, turn around and go the other way. Turns out for this guy, I know it's not a cul-de-sac. It's just a dip. And to persevere through it, it's important that, again, he reads the books. I'm always – it's a really good books about, Mindset's a great book as well. And there's the title of a book, but it's about mindset. It's about being conditioned and persevering through the tough times. Because life is not meant to be easy, frankly, Brian. I mean, it's meant to be an opportunity. Yeah. And once you grasp that, like good old Tim Grover, the book Relentless, right? And he coaches basketball players, and it's all about coming to terms with the fact that once you stop thinking life's going to be easy, or the sale potentially could be easy, then everything just gets easier. Yeah. Because you realize you get to put yourself in that position to condition yourself to perform. So a lot of it's conversation, a lot of it's motivation. There's a spiritual component to it as well. I mean, these days the whole component of meditation is kind of taking on its own essence. There's apps out there, but calm the pond on a regular basis. Wake up in the morning, set an intention, and focus on being present. And if you can give yourself the condition and the doctrine and the education and the training, the background and the system, and trust that capability that you've got through being fully present with your prospects in the moment, that's where the flow is. I mean, again, the flow, athletic flow. When you're about the runner's highs, because they're in the flow. Yeah. So that's a component of it as well. So those are some of the key components of it.
Well, that's it. I heard the awareness. That's good. And I always like that, because when I talk to entrepreneurs, I go, do you have product market fit? Meaning like, okay, you had a bad quarter, but there's still a market for what you sell. And all you have to do is find that market and satisfy that market. and understand you're going to win some deals, you're going to lose some deals. You can't win them all, and you can become better.
Right. I always love the metaphor. Like good old Baywatch. Remember Hasselhoff? Can't save them all, Hasselhoff. Right? And some of the time you got to take it as tongue in cheek. And when the rejection hits, if you internalize it, next thing you know, you're not going to want to pick up the phone again. So you just, hey, next. You've heard it, right? SWN. Some will, some won't. What is it? Some will, some won't. So what? Next, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Classic vernacular in sales, right? So you just got to push through and realize that you're doing a good thing. And that's another thing when it comes to optimizing sales competence is, do you really believe in what you're selling? Or are you selling it just to make a buck? So this is one of the things, back to conditioning, as you said before, if somebody's doing, selling things for the wrong reasons, and from my perspective, you're selling something for the wrong reasons if it's for your reasons. And I hesitate there because a lot of people are like, but wait a second, I got to put food on my table. I got to feed my family. I got to make a commission. I get that. But if you can shift your heart and be truly oriented toward fulfilling your client's needs first, it's like magic. It shifts for you.
That's it.
But you've got to condition yourself to believe that,
And that's it. When you see a salesperson who really loves their product, whatever it is, and gets what it can do for somebody else and how it's different. And usually they've either been a user of it or they came out of the space. And then you talk to a sales rep who has no clue really what the product does or how it works. They just basically set an appointment for someone else to talk about it. And that they look at it as a commodity. They clearly don't have that emotional bond with it. And do you see the companies are trying to take that part of that humanity out of the job, that human feeling part?
Well, from my perspective, the companies that are, and there's a lot of business strategies that compel leaders to do that, but from my perspective, that's not where results lie. It's almost like you're treating people like computers, and we are not computers. We are human beings. So if you can create that culture where people are inspired to perform and step up, and there's a chemistry to this, but it comes with confronting the reality, again, seeing the business as it is, and why you're doing what you're doing, and creating a culture of, I call it a meritocracy where people want to perform and they're compensated for optimal performance, whether it be through profit sharing or whatever. And that's just a component, again, back to systemizing the way business is done and strategizing. That's a component of how to make that work.
Yeah, because when you get that working, it's nothing better. Because then it's fun working there because you are part of something that's bigger than you.
Right. It's funny you bring that up. Because I do sales, I do training seminars and facilitated events that get people to break through into their possibilities. And I start off with 5 ground rules, and I'll just share them with you right now. There's 5 quick ground rules. The first one, I've alluded to it before. It's presence. We're all distracted. We all are thinking about the future or thinking about the past or whatever. Be fully present. Engage in the moment and optimize yourself in the present moment. The second rule of the 5 rules is participation. Business development is a participative sport. You got to get out there and engage and participate. And a lot of people have this entitlement ethic where they think it's just going to come to them. No, you got to step up and participate, right? Yeah. So the third component is possibilities. Being oriented toward what are the possibilities? What do I not know that I don't know, and how can I know it? So these are the ground rules. The fourth ground rule is power. In essence, power, having power to rise above the status quo that's holding you back from being who you can become. And then the fifth rule, since you brought it up, is fun, right? You got to have fun.
Yeah.
And if it's not about being funny, right? But it's about enjoying yourself and creating a condition where your prospect is enjoying themselves as well. And if you've got that into your heart, you've got those 5 rules of those ground rules, which apply to my seminar rooms, but they also apply to life in general, then you're leading a fulfilled life, right? And you're right. It gets to be fun, right? Because that's fulfilling.
Excellent. Hey, Chris, this has been a great conversation. Where do people go to connect with you and learn more about your work?
Well, my business is called GPS Business Group, and that's the website, gpsbusinessgroup.com. And you can see it's a great website that's all about optimizing results and facilitation. And what I'll do, Brian, is I'm going to give a gift to your community. I wrote a book about 8 years ago. I wrote an anthology book with Stephen Covey, John Gray, and Les Brown. It's called GPS for Success. And I've got chapter 4. It's the 4th chapter. You can download that chapter for free. And I'm just going to give that chapter away to people. It's a pretty good book chapter. It's about inspiring your possibilities. If you go to gpsbusinessgroup.com/gift, GIFT, and then just download it, and you'll enjoy it. So that's my gift to your community.
Hope you like that. Chris is a great guy. It's really interesting that he worked with Tony Robbins. He's a really focused guy. And I love talking to people who enjoy that. He actually enjoys the traveling around, something that I don't enjoy doing, but personal taste, I guess. Check him out. And hey, to give you an update, before I do, I also want to make sure you're checking out nudge.ai. This is the way to keep track of the relationships between you and your customers. And it's a great way to find out the easiest way to get into a new account as far as personalized relationship background and also what they care about. So that's super important. Here's an update on the courses. I am going to continue to include the questions that sell course with either of the other 2 courses. So you basically will get a coupon code once you join those courses. And I'm also offering up, I called them one-on-ones. I'm now going to call them coaching calls that have anything to do with the course itself. So if you're trying to start the conversation, get the meeting, and you want to get into an account, send me the account and the title or the link of the person you'd like to get the meeting with. We sit down and we put together a strategy. If you're in closing the complex sale, we can go through a deal start to finish, how to prepare for the deal, how to prevent all the bad things from happening, and how to make sure the good things that will happen. Both courses, you can pay for them over 12 months or all at once. It's not a membership. It's a payment plan. So just make that investment in yourself this year, and you'll have an unlimited access to me to help you out through that process. I record those calls and I put them into the course so that everybody in the community can get value out of it, can learn from each other. And through that year, you become unbelievable at sales. So check them out at b2brevenue.com. Just hit the training tab, click, and it'll show you the courses. If you'd like to schedule a call with me to talk it over to see if it's right for you, we can do that as well. Also, make sure you're checking out my YouTube channel. It's Brian Burns Sales on YouTube. And follow me on LinkedIn. I send out videos pretty much every day with little sales ideas, insights, tips, whatever you call them. And tell a friend about the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast as well. I've got 2 other shows. One is called Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers. It's a daily show where it's about 8 minutes where I answer a particular topic or question in sales. The other is the B2B Revenue Leadership podcast where I interview leaders, CEOs, CMOs, CROs, and we talk about what's working today. So if you're into the leadership side of selling and growing a business, you'd love that podcast. And I really appreciate you listening. If you have a guest in mind, let me know. Just send me an email over on LinkedIn. All the contact information's in the show notes. Just swipe up or tap the artwork, depending on the platform you're on. And we'll see you next time.